Man, have you ever heard of the Cave of Eternal Darkness? They say it's somewhere near the Serra do Medo, a place no sane person would ever dare to go. But of course, we, in the peak of our youthful bravery or stupidity, depending on who you ask, decided it would be a great idea to explore this place. My friends and I, João, Pedro, Leticia, and I, gathered one Friday night, armed with flashlights, ropes, and an old map we found in the town library. The stories we'd heard about the cave varied. Some said it was haunted by the spirits of miners who died inside. Others spoke of an ancient monster that devoured anyone who ventured too deep. But of course, we thought it was all just urban legend. We arrived at the cave entrance around midnight. The full moon lit the path, and for a moment, we almost thought about turning back. The silence was heavy and oppressive, and even the crickets seemed to avoid the place. But we were already there, so we went in. The first thing we noticed was the darkness. The flashlight beams seemed to be swallowed by the stone walls, barely lighting a few meters ahead. The air was damp and cold, and a strange smell, like mold and something rotten, filled the atmosphere. We walked for quite a while, exploring narrow passages and large halls, always with the feeling that something or someone was watching us. The cave felt like an endless labyrinth, and no matter how hard we tried to mark our path, we soon realized we were completely lost. Then we heard the first sound, a faint whisper, almost imperceptible, coming from the depths. We stopped, trying to identify the source, but the sound disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. We continued, now a bit more apprehensive. Further ahead, we found an old campsite, torn tents, old backpacks, and rusted climbing gear. But what really sent chills down our spines were the bones. Scattered on the ground, human bones, broken and bleached. It was impossible to tell how many people had died there, but it certainly wasn't a small number. That's when Leticia started to panic. She wanted to get out of there, but the paths that had once seemed clear were now just indistinguishable shadows. We were trapped. We decided to rest for a bit, trying to find a solution. That's when we heard the whisper again, but now it was louder and closer. The flashlights began to flicker, and in a split second, we were in complete darkness. Desperation took over, and all we heard was Leticia's scream. We turned the flashlights on again, and Leticia was there, but something was different. Her eyes were glazed over, and she was mumbling incomprehensible words. Pedro tried to calm her down, but she simply started walking toward a narrow passage, as if she were hypnotized. We followed her because, well, what else could we do? The passage led us to a gigantic hall, where a strange blue light was emanating from the floor. In the center, there was a deep well, and Leticia was dangerously close to the edge. Before we could reach her, a shadowy figure emerged from the well. It was tall, skeletal, with glowing eyes and a sinister smile. I felt a chill down my spine as it approached Leticia, whispering those same strange words. The figure stopped and looked directly at us, and that's when we realized we weren't dealing with a spirit or a common monster. It was something much older and more evil. Before we could react, everything went dark again. I woke up outside the cave, alone with the sun rising. My friends had disappeared, and the cave entrance was sealed, as if it had never existed. Now, every night, I hear those whispers and see those glowing eyes in my nightmares. I feel like something was left incomplete in that cave. Something that still needs to be faced. And I know that sooner or later I'll have to go back there, even if it's just to figure out what really happened to my friends. The days after the experience in the cave were a blur of fear and desperation. I woke up every night in cold sweats. Those horrible images burned into my mind. My missing friends, the dark figure, the incessant whispers. It all felt like an endless nightmare. I told the story to the police, but of course, no one believed me. They said it was impossible for a cave to be in that location and that I'd probably suffered some kind of trauma, inventing things to cope with the loss of my friends. But I knew the truth. I saw it. I lived it. With no one to help me, I decided to investigate on my own. I spent weeks buried in old books and dusty files at the local library, trying to find any clues about the cave or the creature we encountered there. It was one afternoon, while flipping through a book on urban legends, that I found something interesting. there was a reference to a cave known as the Mouth of Hell. According to the book, this cave had been used by an ancient cult that worshipped dark entities, and many of the cult members mysteriously disappeared while trying to summon these entities. The description of the place perfectly matched our cave, and one passage mentioned a well where the rituals were performed. With this new information, I knew I had to go back. I needed to find out what happened to my friends, and maybe even try to rescue them, if there was still hope. But this time I'd be prepared. I bought new equipment, studied cave exploration techniques, and convinced a friend, Marcos, to come with me. He was skeptical but also curious and willing to help. We returned to the Serra do Medo on a moonless night. The atmosphere was even more oppressive than before, as if nature itself was trying to keep us away from that place. We arrived at the entrance of the cave, which, surprisingly, was open again, as if waiting for us. We entered cautiously, this time marking our path with glow-in-the-dark tape. The passages seemed even darker and more sinister, and the whispers began to surround us right from the start. Marcos was visibly nervous, but we kept our focus, pushing forward with determination. We reached the old campsite, and to our surprise, it was intact, as if no one had been there since our last visit. The bones were still scattered across the ground, and the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. We decided not to linger too long and moved on, trying to find the hall with the well. The whispers grew louder, and the flashlights began to flicker again. This time we were prepared and used backup flashlights. The narrow passage led us to the massive hall, and there it was, the well glowing with that sinister blue light. But something was different. The dark figure was waiting for us, as if it knew we would return. Before we could react, Marcos was pulled into the well by invisible hands. I ran to the edge, trying to hold on to him, but it was too late. He was swallowed by the darkness, and all that was left was the echo of his scream. Desperate, I looked around, searching for a way to save my friends. That's when I saw Lidisha. She was on the other side of the hall, her eyes still glazed over, muttering those strange words. The dark figure approached, its sinister smile widening. In a deep, guttural voice, it began speaking, mixing ancient words with a language I couldn't understand. A cold chill ran through my body as it revealed that my friends were trapped in a world of shadows, between life and death. To rescue them, I would have to face the darkness and break the bond that kept that creature in our world. Not knowing what to do, I closed my eyes and focused, trying to remember the stories of banishment rituals. I recited a prayer I found in one of the books, hoping it would work. The figure hesitated for a moment, and the blue light began to weaken. I seized the opportunity and ran to Lidisha, grabbing her hand and pulling her away from the well. She resisted at first, but then she started to regain her consciousness, her eyes returning to normal. The dark figure let out a deafening scream and, in one last effort, tried to reach us, but the blue light completely disappeared, and it was sucked back into the well. I held Lidisha tightly as the hall trembled and the cave began to collapse. We ran as fast as we could, following the glow-in-the-dark tape to the exit. We barely managed to escape before the entrance was sealed again, this time forever. I still hear the whispers and my friends are still missing, but now I know the fight is far from over. Lidisha is safe, but Pedro and Marcos are somewhere in there, waiting for me, and I won't give up until I find them and destroy that curse once and for all. Next time I go back, I'll be even more prepared, because now it's personal. The weeks that followed were a living nightmare. Lidisha was traumatized, and the nightmares continued to haunt us. The whispers, the visions of the dark figure, and the constant feeling of being watched. All of it became part of my everyday life. But instead of discouraging me, it only fueled my determination to end this curse and save my friends. I threw myself into studying even harder. I spent entire days in libraries, consulted experts in occultism and ancient rituals, and even spoke to people who claimed to have had experiences with the supernatural. Everything pointed to the creature we encountered being an ancient evil spirit, a guardian of a portal to the world of shadows. To defeat it and free my friends, I would need a far more powerful and specific ritual. I gathered the necessary materials: rare herbs, ancient symbols meticulously drawn, and consecrated objects. Lidisha, though still shaken, decided to help me. We knew the next attempt could be the last, and we had to be prepared for anything. Return to the cave. A final confrontation. We went back to the Serra do Medo, and to our surprise, the entrance to the cave was visible again, as if it were calling us back. We entered cautiously, this time not only carrying lanterns but also protective talismans and tools for the ritual. When we reached the well chamber, the dark figure was there, waiting, its eyes glowing with inhuman malice. I didn't hesitate. I began reciting the words of the ritual, drawing symbols on the ground around the well. Lidisha stood firm, holding the consecrated objects and repeating the words with me. The creature let out a furious scream, but the blue light began to change color, shifting to a golden glow. The ground trembled, and the darkness seemed to retreat. In one final effort, the figure tried to attack us, but the symbols on the ground glowed brightly, pushing it back into the well. Finally, there was a deep silence. The golden glow surrounded the chamber, and I saw, with relief, the figures of Pedro and Marcos emerge from the well, disoriented but alive. We had succeeded. The curse was broken. A new beginning. But I know that the danger hasn't completely passed. Something darker and older may be waiting in the shadows, and we must be ready for whatever comes next. Thank you for watching another Dark Tales video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any scary stories. See you next time, and beware of the dark.